Hey Upper Friday, if you see me sweating, it is because I am dying over here. This week we learned that Apple is suddenly becoming fun again, Samsung won a massively consequential lawsuit against BOE, and the US decided to add basically export taxes to their own chips. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. This video was sponsored by Henson Shaving. Okay, for my first story of the week, the old Apple is finally coming back after like a decade of complacency. A report from Bloomberg says that Apple is going to release an avalanche of new gadgets. This includes a big push for a tabletop robot targeted for 2027, which is basically an iPad on top of a motorized arm, built on a new and supposedly smarter LLM Siri. This Siri might have an animated face based on the Finder icon, which I think is a pretty fun idea. Next, there are home security cameras, which can also anchor an Apple security system that can automate household functions. So these would not only function as security cameras, but also as essentially the eyes of your home automation system. Then there's also thinner and redesigned iPhones for release this year, which we already know about, smart glasses, a foldable phone, a 20th anniversary iPhone, and the revamped headset dubbed N100, plus also a large foldable device that melds a MacBook and an iPad. Meanwhile, we've also just received reports this week of a MacBook that would cost $599 and feature an iPhone processor instead of an M-series chip coming soon too. Now, I'm not confident that all of these are going to be good ideas, and of course they're also not all original ideas. We've seen companies like Amazon and Samsung do some parts of this before, but this big push for new device categories is clearly an end of an era. For the last 10 years, Apple has not shown any radically new ideas for hardware beyond the Vision Pro. Just slightly rehashed versions of the same products again and again, which I think is what a complacent company looks like. A company that knows it has its own users and developers trapped in its ecosystem and can just extract trend, for example through its App Store monopoly or by launching its own lazy versions of existing services like music and video streaming. But through the combination of regulatory scrutiny as well as the AI hype in general, I think Apple feels like the foundations of their business are being shaken and they just have to try again. I don't know if they'll succeed, but I'm really happy that they're at least trying. I've linked to the full Bloomberg article below that you can read if you want to get a lot more details. Okay, for my second story of the week, Samsung Display has won what appears to be its most important lawsuit maybe ever, and it has huge implications for the whole tech industry. The Korean industry publication Chosun reports that the International Trade Commission in the US has placed a 14-year and 8-month ban on Chinese display giant BOE for allegedly stealing Samsung's trade secrets in making OLED displays. BOE is China's most important display maker by far, and they make displays for tons of different devices that all of us use, including reportedly the upcoming iPhone 17 series, but also TVs, laptops, VR headsets, and so on. The claim is that BOE entered the market and began mass production in a short period of time without evidence that it had been doing independent R&D. The ITC reportedly thinks that they basically stole most of their know-how from Samsung instead of researching it themselves. According to the report, BOE is slapped with an all-round lockdown that prevents all sales activity in the United States for an incredible 14 years and 8 months. Meanwhile, a letter from this word salad of a commission from the US Congress claims that, quote, "In order to protect US national security interests, the Commission must exercise its statutory authority to ban imports of BOE's patent-infringing displays." We had earlier reports claiming that the iPhone 17 Pro models would come with BOE displays, but only in China, which now make even more sense given this ruling. I think most other device makers can't usually afford to dual source components as important as their displays for different markets, so if this ruling is upheld, many brands will simply drop BOE altogether if they want to sell to the US at all. BOE was quickly gaining on Samsung in recent years, so if this really does pass, then that would give the Koreans loads of breathing room. Okay, and for my third story of the week, the Financial Times reported that Nvidia and AMD agreed to pay 15% of the revenue they make from selling their chips to China to the US government. The FT article calls this an unusual agreement with the Trump administration to obtain export licenses, which include Nvidia's H20 and AMD's MI308 chips, and the FT quotes export control experts who say that, quote, "No US company has ever agreed to pay a portion of their revenues to obtain export licenses." This sounds like an export tax, like a reverse tariff basically, which is a weird thing. I don't understand how it would help national security concerns, but okay, I guess. Now, as for our release monitor, we start with Insta360, who launched their new drone called Anti-Gravity A1. As expected, it's a 360-degree drone that weighs 249 grams. To fly it, you have to wear a headset like with an FPV drone, but this one, funnily enough, also has a screen on the outside, so others can actually see what you're seeing. For now, there's no pricing or further availability information yet, but it looks pretty cool. Then next, Samsung announced what it calls its first ever micro RGB TV. That is an LCD screen, but the backlight actually uses LEDs that are even smaller than what you'd find in a mini LED TV, and they're also fully RGB instead of just being white. The first model costs over $30,000 and it's also only available in Korea, so those are two good reasons for why you can't actually afford one, I guess. Moving on to things you also can't buy, HTC released the Vive Eagle, which is a clear competitor to Meta's Ray-Bans. The glasses got a camera, speakers, and an AI assistant, though for now these are only sold in Taiwan, and they cost an equivalent of $520 USD, which is bizarrely expensive. And meanwhile, bizarrely cheap is this new Teenage Engineering Mini ITX computer case, which is made from a single sheet of plastic. The company says that they set out to build the cheapest case possible, and so they ended up with something that costs, and I'm serious, $0 plus shipping, and it's already sold out, of course. This is definitely partially a publicity stunt, but people did buy this. As usual, the links to all the newly announced products are in the description, even though you can't actually buy anything this week. Alright, and we start the brief with a teaser for the revived Pebble Time 2. The watch looks quite a lot like the original, just with a way bigger screen and way smaller bezels, and while I'm unlikely to go back to Pebble from Wear OS, seeing this revival still makes my old Pebble nerd heart happy. Meanwhile, a teaser that made my heart cringe was Vivo teasing its upcoming headset. It's called the Vivo Vision, which is very original, and it even has a head strap that's a carbon copy of Apple's Vision Pro. We don't know more yet, but for me, that is probably enough. And moving on, Amazon rolled out same-day delivery of perishable groceries in 1,000 US cities. This means you can now get your veggies and meat and whatever from Amazon directly without ever having to leave your home. You lazy bum. And then in AI news, YouTube started rolling out its automatic AI-based age verification this week. If the AI decides that you're a minor based on your viewing habits, you now have to prove that you're an adult, otherwise you'll be restricted to only accessing parts of the site. Then, still with AI, Bloomberg this week reported that Tesla disbanded its Dojo supercomputer team and that they're, quote, upending the automaker's effort to build an in-house supercomputer for developing driverless vehicle technology. Instead, Elon confirmed that they'll be doubling down on their chips called AI5 and AI6, though I don't understand how that's a replacement for Dojo. But then this week, Elon Musk also threatened to sue Apple, for good measure, over claims that the company dared to consistently rank OpenAI over its own Grok chatbot in the App Store. How dare they? Then his own users quickly got Grok to fact-check him on Twitter, with the AI siding with OpenAI, which ChatGPT then retweeted, saying, good bot. Then as a result, Grok was quickly taken completely offline. Presumably, Elon Musk decided to tweak its bot until it started praising its master unconditionally again in public. What a weird timeline we're living in. And talking of a weird timeline, Perplexity made what Reuters called a, quote, bold 34.5 billion bid for Google's Chrome browser. And that's bold because it's more than twice as much as Perplexity itself is worth, though of course the firm would likely just get money from various investors to do the deal. Then in kind of cool news, Android authorities Hadley Simons managed to go hands-on with the new Google Translate feature that basically lets you do language learning similar to Duolingo in the Google Translate app. For now, you can get it to practice French and Spanish in a variety of preset scenarios if you manage to enable it, but I guess more is coming soon. And next, Cowboy, the makers of the e-bike that I ride myself, just received an emergency funding round that should help them avoid bankruptcy. The firm raised money from the ironically named Rebirth Group to, quote, ensure its long-term future after media reports were mounting that they were basically running out of money. Now, I love my e-bike, but these things are a perfect reminder that tech companies are constantly trying to sell you on the idea that the newer thing with more features and more complicated things on it is somehow better for you, when in reality, often the opposite is true. And it's the same thing with razors. The big brands over time started making overcomplicated monstrosities with 3, 4, or even 5 blades, moisturizing strips and whatnot, but then my sponsor realized that the better solution was actually to go back to the classic concept of a safety razor and just to improve that in one key way. They made theirs really precise, which makes all the difference. Precision is achieved by machining the aluminum parts with super tight tolerances so that their blades only extend by 0.0013 inches past the shave plane according to them. That's less than the thickness of a human hair, and the less the blade extends, the less chatter there is. Less chatter means more stability, and this is the main way to get a clean shave and also to avoid irritation and razor burn. The robust construction also keeps the blade at exactly the right angle and supports it there uniformly so it's always perfectly parallel. Henson says that their aerospace machine shop in Canada has also made parts for the Mars rover and also the International Space Station, so they know how to do a precise job. I've been shaving with mine for a few months now, mostly to clean up the edges everywhere and also to get the neck clean, and it's been a really nice experience. Just a few quick swipes with very minimal pressure and I have a perfectly clean shave. There's of course also much less waste than there is with cartridges, which is good for the environment, and while the handle itself is of course a bit of an investment, the blades themselves only cost about 10 cents each instead of the $2 or so that you'd pay for a cartridge. This means that over time you actually end up saving a ton of money, and Henson doesn't even have a subscription because you just won't need one. And to go further, Henson will even give buyers their first 100 blades for free if they use my link hensonshaving.com/TFC. Note that to do this, you need to put both the razor and the blades into your cart when you check out. So go to hensonshaving.com/TFC, enter the code TFC for 100 blades for free. Happy shaving, and I'll see you next Friday.